You're listening to Going to the Chapel, a 21 Jump Street podcast. Grab your Aquanet, throw on your best acid wash jacket, and join us as we gab about this classic television program. Hiya, Narc Blossoms. I'm Amanda McLaughlin.
I'm Christopher McLaughlin.
And this is Going to the Chapel.
This podcast is a deep dive into the Fox television show 21 Jump Street that ran from 1987 to 1991. And just like in our marriage, I know nothing.
And I know everything. Hello again, Narc Blossoms. Here we are.
Season 1, Episode 5, My Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades, which is just the most 80s sounding thing ever.
It's based on a song title that is The Future's So Bright, I Have to Wear Shades.
Ah. See, I don't know any music, so you have to depend
and
on
I
her
would
for this
like
one.
insert here like a sound clip from that song, but I'm pretty sure that we would get
It's copyright.
in trouble for that.
They would shut our whole channel down.
So just imagine a song like that from the 80s. What you're imagining is pretty much what it is.
All right, you ready to dive in? Let's do this.
I'm ready.
All right. So,
by the way, I will preface this by saying this is probably the first super serious toned episode.
oh yeah, it definitely has a much more...
Not that, I mean...
It's actually pretty funny at times, but...
It is. There are parts of... I mean, that's true of the show in general, but I think this episode has the heaviest kind of criminal aspect to it. Like, not the seediest necessarily, but to me, it's one of the harder ones. It's one that I don't like to watch very often.
Well, and it definitely feels much more like a typical police procedural, Law and Order... Not Law and Order, because that's a court thing, but, much more like a typical police procedural than sort of the fun-loving thing that it was for the first few episodes.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure, like, drugs and things that we've had in the past are obviously important issues, but this one... Yeah. Anyway, let's dive in.
All right, let's dive in. Yes, we'll discuss it. So there's no cold open, so it's just the opening credits with the spray paint and singing about all the good stuff.
About jumping.
Jump, yeah. And so we jump into some drunk revelers bursting out of what is clearly a prep school, carrying umbrellas because it's raining. I think it must have been raining the week they were filming this because there's a number of scenes in the rain.
And they have umbrellas.
And there's a preppy, scarf wearing brigade, and they're all very
3 boys and 1 girl.
They're all very obviously well-to-do.
I call this the 80s life and death brigade because for anyone who's a Gilmore Girls fan, you'll know what I'm referencing.
It gets even more explicitly that later, but yes,
I am hashtag not Team Logan, so I'm like, this is what. I mean, Gilmore Girls make it seems like fun. We just go out and do
Rich
things.
Kids,
but I really think that this episode is more probably what that's like.
So at the very beginning, with the 3 boys, we notice, and you notice it right away because it's very hard to miss this face, is baby Josh Brolin, who is our first, as far as I know, as far as the 2 of us can think of, the first future famous person. Although he was already famous at this point. Goonies had already come out, right?
Goonies had come out.
I mean, he was, and of course he's a Hollywood royalty in the sense that he was, James Brolin is his dad.
Also, for any young people watching Thanos.
Well, Thanos.
We're talking about Thanos.
Yes, I mean, he's been in everything.
And for anybody who was actually around in the 80s, yes, we're talking about
Josh Brolin from the Goonies.
Brand from the Goonies.
I mean, gosh, he's been in everything
He
recently.
has been in many things.
He was the baddie in Deadpool, and I mean, I still think of him as Llewellyn Moss from No Country for Old Men, which is an iconically good performance by him. He's a terrific and very broad actor, and you will see he does a really good job with this role.
And I also want to add, this is something that I've read. I don't remember where I read it, and just FYI, a lot of the things that I mention on here as facts that I have in my brain, many of them are in my brain, as we talk about in the beginning. I know everything, but usually the sources are things like Wikipedia or IMDb from ages ago. But I remember reading that Brolin was actually up for the part of Tom Hanson originally. He was one of the actors in consideration, which would have been a much different show.
Very different feel to it, for sure. Yeah. Fun fact, James Brolin was actually read for James Bond when they were reading literally everybody. Yeah, there's actually test footage of him reading, and he's pretty good. He even has a decent British accent. But then
that would be weird.
It's weird that they were cast. They were
accent.
with American actors for some reason. But anyway, we're way off topic, but just a fun fact for the day. But yes, don't get your facts from podcasts, kids. Always do your own research. I'd say that's about YouTube videos.
We're not really... This is... If you want something scripted and well-researched, this is not that podcast.
This is just us BSing about a show that is
one
fun.
of the other revelers, you did not recognize him, but you did not watch the show, is, I don't remember what his name is, but is one of the doctors in Doogie Howser.
Oh, nice. So it's so 80s right now between the Goonies and Doogie Howser. We got everything covered.
Yep.
So we end up in a convenience store, and baby Josh Brolin, whose character, by the way, is named Rolander,
Rollator.
Rollator, that's right, Rollator.
Which every time they say his name makes me think of Rolaids.
Yeah.
And I guess it's supposed to be like one of those like rich sounding names.
It does sound kind of like
but it just sounds like
stupid.
Rolaids to me.
Yeah, it's kind of a dumb name, but names are dumb sometimes. So he's trying to buy liquor, and the convenience store guy is basically like, I need to see some ID. And so, of course, being the rich twerp that he is, he slides him. I don't remember how much money he slides him. Was it 20?
Well,
100?
he asks for ID, and I think it's 100. He's like, I only have this 100, sir. And he says, how about this? You keep the change.
Yeah.
Like he bribes him.
Total bribery.
To not have to.
Of course, the problem is he's a smarmy dick about it. Then he's like, oh, you need to put it in this, and I need glasses too.
And then he's like,
yeah.
I need a bag because
open
alcohol
containers
is illegal or something, sir. I don't know.
He's a complete dick to this
He's
poor convenience store guy who's just trying to do his job.
Like, we're just setting up that these are rich white boys who can do whatever the F they want to do.
Yeah.
Also, I wrote down, if I was that guy, that $100 bill, I mean, I'm sure he doesn't make a lot of money, but I'd be like, hell no, let me see your ID.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
said it the first time. But that smarmy stuff doesn't work for me.
I feel like they're already setting up essentially, of course there's a class thing going on anyway, but setting up essentially that he knows that this guy's daddy is somebody, obviously. And so he knows that he's never going to see the inside of a jail cell. So, why push it? Take the $100 and go for it.
I guess, but you can just be like, get out of the store, dude. I don't know. I wouldn't take the change from 3 bottles of cheap champagne as a bribe to let, of course, whatever.
Anyway, so we cut to partying on what is clearly one of their dad's yachts. They're like, oh, Miss Morgan, are you having fun now? And so the girl is obviously not.
They're getting her
plastered. The implication as they sort of, because it kind of pans away, is that there's date rape is about to happen here.
Because they're chanting that there are bunks down below.
Oh, that's
bunks
right.
Down below.
Oh, God, yeah, it's
and
so
I
gross.
wrote, bad things happen on boats.
Yeah, I know.
Do not get on a boat with rich people.
You Always Sunny in Philadelphia fans might know the scene where he talks about I'm in the boat, but because of the implication, I don't know if you know that scene. There's a scene where he's talking about she'll have sex with me because of the implication. He's like, the implication. Well, I'm in a boat. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, well, you were making it weird. It's this whole thing about how when you're in a boat with somebody, you don't have a lot of choice as to escape routes. Just ask poor Natalie Wood about how that goes.
That's what I was gonna say. Boats.
Bad stuff happens on boats.
But yeah, they're talking about bunks down below, which gave me such an icky feeling.
Yeah.
This poor girl. Anyway.
So after that, we cut to a kid delivering the paper, presumably the following morning, and one of the first directorial things I've kind of noticed, he stops suddenly, and there's a dolly zoom, which if you don't know what a dolly zoom is, think of the scene I always think of is Roy Scheider character when he sees the shark attack on the beach, and you see in Jaws where it creates this effect where everything
zoomy effect
where everything else is going around.
Whoa! You see it a lot when there's a big reveal or something scary, the whoa.
It's a really cool
I call
effect.
It the whoa.
It's
shot.
a really cool effect.
And they do that on this newspaper boy. I wrote great shot.
It's how it's done is you it's called a dolly zoom because you dolly the camera back away from the subject, but you zoom in on the subject
while
at the same
you're doing
time.
It.
So it basically makes everything else. It keeps the subject basically in place, but everything else is moving around. So it's that disorienting thing. I think that's what Hitchcock did in Vertigo, I believe, is how he did the Vertigo effect when Jimmy Stewart's trying to go up the stairs. Anyway, sorry, that's a little bit of film nerdery going on there.
No, that's good.
And then we have a regular zoom onto poor dear Kim Morgan, dead in a ditch.
And I mean, it's pretty like...
It's pretty graphic looking.
I mean,
she's
there's
like
no
not
blood
bloody,
or anything like that, but it's not
She's like
pleasant.
blue, as I remember.
Yeah,
sort
she
of.
is. It's really uncomfortable. Yeah. And I was like, that kid is now scarred for life. And he's a young Paperboy, too. I mean, this is not like a 15-year-old Paperboy. He's got to be, what, 9?
Yeah, well, I don't know, maybe
somewhere
10.
Between like 9 to 12.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, he's scarred for life now. Also, I swear, I said this to you and you were like, yeah, kind of. I think he looks like our son at that age. Like, that's what I imagine he's going to look like.
Maybe. I could see it.
It was something about his face, and I was imagining
our poor
child coming across that.
Our son is 3, by the way.
My heart. Yes. That's such a great scene, like with that shot and the way it's done. It's like so shocking.
Oh yeah.
That's part of the reason I say this one is like one of the more serious ones now, because like
this is like a murder mystery.
It's actually a murder now, which has not been a thing.
So we cut from this to Jump Street. And the first thing I wrote is Jenko going full lumberjack. He's got an orange, and boys at orange, knit cap and flannel, and it looks like he looks like he's ready to go. I thought he was
going deer hunting or something.
Yeah, it does have that look to it. Like I love how hippies and like rednecks can sometimes have this like convergent fashion sense. But
that's weird, man.
And Hanson, meanwhile, is got this very preppy. He's got this like collar. I don't know if it was popped or just
it
big
wasn't
collar.
Popped. It was a pretty big collar on this shirt.
And of course, HT has got his dangly earrings because that's just how it is. So
the guy from downtown, I am assuming he's the guy from Homicide.
Right, is discussing the situation.
And is discussing the situation and basically being like, we think it's some people from West Chadway, because there was a big party. Mm-hmm. West Chadway is, of course, the name of the preppy school.
Yeah, yeah.
And so they're like, well, why don't you ask everyone that was... Because he's talking about this girl, and like... They know that she had alcohol in her system. They're doing tests for more things. There's probably drugs involved, etc. And so we're looking at a possible homicide, possible rape, because she was at this party. And of course, the guys are asking, why don't you just round up and ask people who are at the party? And he basically says, they're all the Ritchies.
Right.
And I can't do very much about, daddies all have money. And of course, so Penhall does this whole like, they're always above the law, that kind of... Then Jenko says, well, you're going to have to learn because you and Hanson are going
to the prep school. And then HT is going to be backup, which we'll figure out what that's going to be. And then Judy is going to be on victim duty, so she's going to interview the victim's family and try to figure out what happened with Kim, who is obviously from the other side of the tracks.
More information about her. And I wrote down, because Jenko was talking about West Chadway and that it was $6,000 a year at the time. So I did the conversion for what that would be today.
Oh, yes, thank you.
It would be $13,550.60 for high school.
For a year?
For a year.
There's some upper level that are more expensive than that. I believe up to $20,000 these days. And
again, I think we're supposed to assume that this is California, so I believe that a rich school in California would absolutely...
Those prep schools like Sidwell Friends in Washington, or some of the ones up in New England that what's that book?
You'd have to pay me that much to go to a prep school.
That's all. And Hanson's excited, though. And, of course...
Well, because he's like, finally, somewhere where I don't have to act like a whatever.
Right, act like a tough. He can actually...
And Doug's like, bruh.
And I love... Jenko says, you got on the right duds, bub. He's like, he's like, oh, finally Hanson's going to fit in somewhere. We cut to the school, and the headmaster is giving... Penhall and Hanson a tour. Penhall looks so uncomfortable in his... I feel like that wasn't just Penhall being uncomfortable.
Oh, that's absolutely Peter DeLuise.
I feel like that DeLuise wearing a tie is just like, why am I wearing a tie? But looking so preppy. And he's giving them all these like crazy... Well, of course, the directions. The school is confusing and labyrinthine. And then all their rules are like arcane and just weird.
He was explaining the schedule, and it was this weird thing like the... third period classes at the... I don't know. It made no sense. And of course, Doug was like, what? Like, it was very... And he's very like, well, here at West Chadway,
Yes. So...
It's unusual for us to let people in partway through the year.
Oh, yeah. Well,
blah, 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 blah.
The school is exactly as pretentious as you would imagine it to be. Right up to the English class, which we get into, and the teacher is either English or just pretentious. I'm not sure which.
I think he's just pretentious, because he didn't sound English. He was
like, all right, boys, we're preparing you for your, finishing school, essentially. The worst.
What is Robin Williams' character's name in...
Keating.
Yes, he's like the complete, total opposite.
He's like the previous teacher before Keating starts.
Oh my God.
Or no, the one who takes over for him.
He's absolutely what I would think that an English teacher would be like, somewhere like this, but the way... Oh my God, I hate it.
The one who makes them put the introduction back in the book.
I'm going to just say that I hate almost everyone in this episode. All these rich people. I think that's part of the reason this one's hard for me to watch, is because rich people still get to do whatever the F they want. Rich white men always get to do whatever they want. And it just makes me sick, and I just hate them all.
They're analyzing All the King's Men by Robert Penn Warren, which is it's a pretentious thing to be studying. It's not a bad book, but it's just appropriate.
But the pretension is in the way that they talk about novels. It's so... I remember doing that in high school, but it's like, and what is the symbolism of that, and what did he mean? Why were the curtains red? And I'm like... They just wrote a book.
Yeah, and she says this is a nerd. So he's obviously going to pick on the new kids, and Penhall, to everyone's surprise, or at least everyone watching surprise, has done the reading. Good job, Penhall. He answers the question.
He answers a question correctly.
He answers a question correctly. Well, at least he did enough of the reading to answer the question. And then he asks Hanson another question. The questions aren't really important germane to this thing. And Hanson tries to give a smart alecky response. I think he's still kind of in that thing of like, I'm going to be the bad boy.
Well, and that's the thing, is that they've trained him so hard to like be the cut up and be like, because every time that they go undercover, they're usually like supposed to be kind of these seedy guys who have gotten kicked out of their other school so that they could figure out who is the criminal element. But in this case, it's like Ritchie rich criminal element. So their backstory is that they violated something on the honor code at their last school, but yet they're still these Ritchie rich, That's the weird thing about like rich criminals, is that whole thing of like, it's not that they're nerds, but they have to do well in school, and they have to have this certain level of being better than everyone else, and academics is one way they can do that. So like, they're not nerds, but you have to know everything about All the King's Men, for example.
Right.
And I think Hanson is still trying to do that whole, like, he makes some silly joke.
Well, I do find it funny that they're all obviously very proud. Like, even the rich, like, kids who were definitely headed to Harvard in public school almost wanted to hide the fact that they were smart. Like, certainly that was me for trying to hide the fact that I was smart. And, like, these guys are, like douchey and pretentious about, I know all the answers to the questions, which is funny because, like, you think rich twerps would be like, I don't have to know all the answers to the questions, I'm going to get into Harvard anyway. But, like, obviously there's a sort of competitiveness about this particular institution. Anyway.
I think that's bred a little bit.
Oh, yeah. It feels...
also really part of it is that it's all bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
So they have to be good at bullshitting. They're like, well, the meaning of All the King's Men is that we're all on a road, and sometimes we get off the path, but we need to straighten up, or some stupid shit.
Which is the answer that Hanson
funny
didn't
because
know.
that's what they're supposed to be doing. Right. But
so
also because when Tom...
The chant...
They start this chant
state
when the
college or
state
college. Like, he's going to have to go to state college.
Because, one, that must be the worst thing in the world. And my question is, the teacher doesn't seem to stop that. So that to me almost seems like something that just, there's, not that they're supposed to do, but like that just happens at the school, that you start chanting state college to people.
Well, okay, so let's tie this into current events. Of course, that we just had that scandal with Lori Loughlin and Felicity Huffman, cheating to get their kids into the right school, which is USC, which was a state college, by the way.
Damn it ain't Becky. Why you gotta be this way?
But at certain of these preparatory schools, it's 100% that way. Like, if you don't get into the right college, like the big Ivy Leagues or Stanford or the liberal arts schools like your Amhersts or Williams or something, then you failed. Like, if you have to go to, even one of the still on the U.S. News and World Report list, but a little further down colleges, it's like you failed at life. You're never going to get anywhere.
I feel like it's something that's almost like school sanctioned for them to chant at one another.
It's school sanctioned bullying, 100%.
And I think maybe it's less that like there's like a rule about if someone gets a question wrong, but it's more something that probably for generations they've done, like, pick on the weaklings, basically, kind of thing.
Yeah. Anyway, I put something here that Depp's face is actual Depp. Is all I put. I don't remember what happened there, but I'm sure it was a very Depp, like, pulled a face that was just like, I was like, oh, there he is.
Saying his, like, smart alecky thing.
Yeah. And then so we moved to the hallway, and Penhall is meanwhile being like, what's wrong with going to state? He's basically doing the same thing we're doing.
Also, Penhall says, I just got lucky because All the King's Men is, like, the only book I read in high school.
And it's the only book he read for prep, I guess.
Well, and Hanson is, like, really frustrated. He's like, what do I know? I'm going to state. Like, he's really upset that this happened because his whole vibe in this episode is, like, these are my people. Like, he even says that, I think. These are my people. And I should be able to, of all things, I should be able to fit in with them. And then, like, Penhall is the one who actually got the question right. But Penhall is like, well, what's wrong with State College? Like, and it's so funny how Tom gets in this episode because it doesn't really matter other than the fact that they're trying to, figure out this thing with Rollator and the other two. I don't remember their names.
I think it's still, there's a status thing with Hanson, obviously. Maybe it's his daddy issues or something. Although I do have Hanson born to prep. Somebody, I don't know if he said...
that's what Penhall says.
Yeah, he was born to be a prep.
Tom Hanson, born to prep, which is so true.
True enough. The important thing in this hallway scene is the boys... One of the boys tells the other...
They're not obviously next to Penhall.
No, in a separate thing, find out that Kim Morgan died, because I'm sure they just sort of left her drunk on the side of the road somewhere. And so they basically agree to, like, hope that it just kind of blows over and they're going to ignore it.
Well, because the one guy, there's one of the three of them, I can't remember all of their names because I honestly don't give any Fs. He's kind of the one that we get the sense of throughout the episode that he has a little bit more of a conscience than the rest of them do. I mean, not enough to not do things, but he's the one, he comes up, he's like, I just heard that Kim Morgan died. Yeah. What are we going to do about it? And Rollator and the other guy are like, we're not going to do anything about it. They're like, kind of like, knowing looks all around.
Groups always have these kind of hangers-on who want to be part of the group. They don't really buy into what's going on with the group, but they'll look the other way because they just don't want to get
and they
kicked
know
out
they
of the group.
Need to be part of the group.
Right.
Especially in this situation, I think it's like he knows that Rollator is kind of like one of the top dog kind of things,
We cut to the hut with the girls. So, I don't know, did we talk about this? We may have, there's, the headmaster mentions this in the midst of his long monologue, that there's a hut between the girls' school and the boys' school where they can kind of mingle and presumably find mates to do their thing.
Yes, exactly.
It's where the liaisons...
Where the girls can get their MRS degrees.
And so Penhall, of course, being the playa that he is macking away, and Hanson is just not into it at all. But Penhall is playing it up and trying to...
It's also that the girls aren't really into Tom because he's kind of still broody.
He's just being a little bit broody. And the boys arrive. I call them
and
the boys.
I put more earrings because there was some earring work in this that I thought that you appreciated.
Yeah.
Where the girl was wearing earrings and Penhall says, nice earrings. And she says, thanks, my mom gave them to me. He's like, really? Can I try it on? And he puts her earring in her ear, puts her earring in his ear. It's and ridiculous. She's like, does that mean we're going steady now? And he's like, I'll let you know. Yeah. It's great.
So the boys arrive, and I just whip your dicks out already, because they're obviously being like, well, we're the what you guys are going on our turf. So obviously these girls,
I think they're kind of feeling him.
They're also trying to see if these guys are cool or not, or whether they can get them involved in their schemes, which will become clear as time moves along.
Because they're new kids, and of course they're talking about how Rollator is the president of the Honor Council, Society or whatever.
I put Honor Council,
yeah, of course, because that's how things like that work.
Oh yeah. Putting the fox in charge of the hen house.
And they do know that these guys were, I think, the ones at the party, the ones that were seen with Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, we're just setting up the
they're getting to know
getting to know you. Hard cut in this case to the Morgan house. And I just put Judy Hoff's hair is full of secrets. It's which is a Mean Girls reference to the fact that her hair is very big. It's very 80s and wonderful. And she's talking to Kim's mom, and we find out that Kim was a bit of a wild child. Her dad died. This is where I wrote Daddy Issues, the series. Everybody has daddy issues, which, I mean, it's a plot device. And I guess everybody does have daddy issues of one kind or another. We all screw up our children, and we are all screwed up by our parents.
Yeah, and the mom was like, she liked to go out a lot, and she was a little bit wild. Is that so bad since her dad died? I think they're working hard the way that Judy talks to her. They're trying not to get into, victim blaming area. They just need to know, if there was foul play or not. And so...
Yeah.
the mom is saying that, yeah, she went to the parties.
And she was kind of...
Those West Chadway boys. And the mom says that the girl says something like, I could marry more money in a minute than I could make in my entire life. So she was
pursuing her MRS,
trying to do that because she was from the wrong side of the tracks, and she knew that that's the way to, go up in life or whatever with these awful, awful rich
right,
boys.
Well,
but she was like a party girl. Obviously, we get that sense in this scene, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, and it doesn't mean that you should end up dead.
Well, and I think, and this is, it's a time-honored thing women have done this for centuries of, if you're poor, one easy way to get social mobility is to marry rich. And, well, even if you're from the wrong side of the tracks as a woman, that's, 2 strikes against you.
And if you're a person of color, you're just out of luck.
Speaking of the person of color in this scene, Holly Robinson's eyeballs, I just have to mention them every so often.
I'm going to be talking about Peter. Listen, I'm fine with it.
She's
beautiful.
Well, and I think the directors of the series knew, because they give her lots of close-ups, which in addition to having a very pretty face, it's just her eyes are so light,
really
and
nice.
She's just
stunning.
She's still very pretty. Good job, Rodney Peete. So we meet Vinnie, who's her brother, who's
Kim's brother.
Kim's brother, yeah, sorry, not Judy's brother, who is extremely mad about all this. You can tell he's ready to set up a guillotine, and
I get it, because his sister just died. We're not really told how old he is. He's clearly an older brother, and I don't know if he lives with the mother or is just around, because later we see him working in a shop, so he's clearly old enough to be out of school, have a job. I really want to like Vinnie, because I understand his sister just died, was possibly murdered, was possibly raped. Like, I understand his anger. But he just, immediately is, after Judy, they killed her. I know they did. Why aren't you doing anything? And she's like, that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
And he's like, his whole thing is that it wasn't her fault. She didn't have anything to do with it. And I'm like, well, yes, no, but we still need to know the whole thing in order to try to solve it.
Well, Judy's trying to help, and he's just being like,
and he's kind
you guys are not doing anything. Yeah.
And again, it's hard because this is literally
grieving.
Right after it happens. He's grieving. Everybody's grief looks different. Being an older brother, I can understand why he would go to anger, but it's displaced anger. And I know it's because there's no way he could go after the Ritchies, but it's hard because I want to like him, because I'm like, I totally understand. Because if it happened to me, I would want to kill them too. But it's like, he says something like, "Oh, I see they sent their most experienced officer," which is one of those. Yeah, look, it's a young person conversation. But she's like, "Look, man, I'm here to try to help." We
cut to the house, obviously, where the guys are living at the prep school or near the prep school, and
it's one of their houses.
They talk about how
one of their parents' houses.
It's they call themselves the Fun Club. This is where I wrote Life and Death Brigade, because I had the same thought, sort of independently of you.
Yes, and so they're the Fun Club, which I'm like, oh, that's very creative there, fella.
Yeah, that's just great. And Rollator's doing coke off of a coffee table.
They're just straight, just doing coke.
It's so 80s
it's
right now.
It's the most 80s thing I've ever
seen.
Off
a glass coffee table at that.
And cocaine was a huge thing for Ritchies in the 80s, but teenagers, I guess probably rich teenagers, but it's just so crazy to me, because it was they're just talking about how they, what is it that they say that their little motto is? It's they're risk takers.
Oh, I remember it just being douchey, and I didn't write it down.
Something about wealth makers, and that if there's no risk, there's no reward.
Well,
they
that's their big
do
thing.
Crazy things.
It's just they're bored rich kids, and they want to have risk in their lives that they don't have any other way.
Basically.
And they offer Penhall some coke, and he does this little clever maneuver where you can clearly see he's not doing the coke, but he basically brushes it off onto the floor, makes it look like he took it. It's pretty clever, actually.
When you're an undercover cop, you
gotta keep your cover.
Those skills.
And then so a guy in a leather jacket, who we don't know who he is yet, arrives, and everybody's kind of looks at each other shady. He's obviously kind of, the shady guy. He has a briefcase.
And he's clearly not a Ritchie. He's
and he has a briefcase full of cash. Oh, I wrote down the name of the kid who's actually guilty, because you can see, this is where I said, you can see that one kid's actually feeling guilty about it.
Is it Kelly?
Graham is what I wrote, but...
I think that might be his last name, but yeah, Graham.
Graham's his last name, anyway, because I think they call each other by their last names, because of course they do. We find out, basically, they're using...
This guy is telling them they need to do a drug run from him, and they're like, we're not going to do that. And he's like, we're business associates. So he says something about, you use my facilities for a party, I use your daddy's plane to run drugs.
Right.
So clearly whatever this party was, they must have like used, this guy's name is Kurt, they must have used him for it, so he's like pushing them to do a drug run. And they originally say they're not going to do it, but he brings up Kim Morgan.
Yeah.
And he's like, that it was stupid the way you did that. You were here, you were over there, you were everywhere. You bought cheap wine, and they're like, how do you know about that? And he says something about, don't worry, I cleaned it up for you. So we never get a sense of knowing what exactly that means.
Right.
But I'm assuming that maybe there was some physical evidence or something.
Yeah, they were sloppy about what was going on. Of course, they weren't intending to murder her in the end. I mean, it was just I mean, they were intending to rape her, obviously, but which is bad enough. But
yes, it's terrible.
They are convinced by this argument that they need to do this, and they decide to initiate Penhall into their club. They don't indicate what they're doing yet, but they...
Well, and also we want to point out that they didn't really like Tom. This is why Penhall is the only one there. And he says something about who his dad is, because Penhall, of course, has this backstory. And they ask him if he's gone a lot, because they're trying to find another house to, do all their stuff. And he says, well, but my mom's sick, but my friend has a house. So he's trying really hard
get Hanson back in it.
To keep Hanson back in it, because he needs that backup.
And right before commercial break, they ask, do you have a passport? So obviously we're not only just doing drug running, we're doing international drug running. And that is our cliffhanger, if you will, for the commercial break.
Dom DeLuise in the 80s.
Yes.
This year, actually, 87, I looked one up, used to do commercials for, I believe it was Ziploc, and I found one, and it was very cute. So wouldn't that be great if like a Dom DeLuise Ziploc commercial was on this? That would have
been hilarious. Penhall, you can imagine Peter DeLuise being like, "Dad, you're messing with my show." We come back from commercial to 21 Jump Street, and Judy is reporting about what she found out, and I love that she says, "We were not dealing with Gidget here," which is a great reference. I don't know if you get the idea is Gidget, of course, is Sally Field's, just squeaky clean,
beach character,
image.
She and Penhall were talking about something, because she's like, well, she wasn't Gidget, and so Penhall was like, well, maybe she wasn't murdered or something, and she's like, so it's okay for her to be raped, and he's like, no. I like the way that the show is very clearly showing, like, yes, she had these behaviors, but it's actually not okay to victim blame, which in the 80s is like a big deal that they like at all presented that.
Yeah, that's definitely ahead of the show is ahead of its time in some ways.
And Doug was like, no, that's not what I'm. So that kind of rape comes up, because they're still pretty sure that was what happened.
And Penhall clearly has been a little bit charmed by these guys, because he says he doesn't think they're murderers. Which I guess you could not necessarily be charmed by somebody and not think they're a murderer, but
and that causes an argument between Tom and Doug, because Tom's like, oh, well, I thought that you didn't like them, but now that they think you're cool,
he's like, well, I can tell you who they think is a dork.
And he's like, I had to like tell them that your dad has a house that we can use to keep you in it. So they have this argument, because Tom, I think, is still jealous in a weird way that these guys don't like him. And I think Doug does kind of like the attention of it. He's like, because that's why he has that whole like, I don't think.
Well, when you're the other side of the tracks and the rich kids suddenly give you attention for the first time in your life, there might be a little bit of something there.
I mean, so it's like there's a weird dynamic going between Hanson and Penhall, but...
So, anyway, cut the rebop, says Jenko, and all this is going on, which just, I have to throw in some Jenkoisms, because I adore him.
I love him so much.
We both love him, for different reasons, but...
I love him for all the reasons. I mean, again, this is a spoiler, but I get so sad when Forrest isn't on the show anymore, which happens very quickly, actually.
So Jenko gets HT to go check out, I guess, the leather jacket guy, is what I'm writing down. Niles is his name.
Kurt Niles.
Do we cut here? I'm saying Judy's just saying she's being pestered by Vinnie. Well, that's why she's getting phone call after phone call. He's calling in and keeps wanting to talk to Judy about it.
Which is like such a classic, like, the police aren't doing anything, and it's, well, you don't know what they're doing. They're working on it. I know that. I mean, I get it. But.
And I think we must have gotten our first wide shots here, because I start noticing their clothes. I just wrote that Judy has nice boots and torn jeans. It's a good outfit.
Well,
it's just a cute.
That's what she does.
It's very cute. And Jenko continues to be a fashion icon with his flat cap, bomber jacket, and a jersey. He has like some kind of jersey, like with a
Yeah, he
number
had
on
like
under
a
the
jersey
jacket,
on it, which was weird, like a football jersey, I think, which was weird.
which is very not in brand, but it's probably just like something he found at like the thrift stores. You get to see, feeling like the whole outfit was just found at the thrift store.
Know. Yeah.
I also love that Jenko is very worried about the budget for this because they got the rich kids.
Well, because this is when Tom brings up
needing
by
a house.
The way, we need a house.
And HT's
a
like
rich person.
A house? No, it's great. And yeah, Jenko's. I just put it me. Like Jenko's like, I got a budget here, kids.
Well, he says the guys downtown don't like
Yeah.
the money that they're spending, essentially.
Because there's still a possibility of murder going on. Jenko wants them to go ahead and go through with this drug run that's going to happen. And Hanson's very worried. He's like, we're going to be facilitating a crime here.
He's like, not when you're undercover.
Right, and you're like, basically, they're trying to roll these guys up and get the bigger fish, which is the murder charge. He wants them to, especially he wants HT and just all of them in general to bust Niles and get him to roll on the rich kids.
Well, is that what we're doing right now, or are we trying to bust them all with the drugs?
Well, his idea is basically to bust Niles.
Yes.
And,
okay.
So that's the reason to run the drugs, essentially. So that's the basic gist of that scene. So we cut to the hut again, and they're talking about their plans, and they're going to Puerto Vallarta, which is just so rich. That's like a place. Of course, they're going to Puerto Vallarta.
Well, but
anyway.
they're going there to get the drugs.
Yes, and so Hanson, because he's still the square, is not going to be invited.
Yeah, he's there, but they're like, but we'll beat you at your house later.
Yeah, so they're basically, he's just there to provide the house, but at least that does mean that Penhall's plan worked, that he's kind of part of it. And then we cut back to Jump Street. I guess is that it for that scene?
Yeah, and then we jump back to the chapel because Tom is like really worried about this whole house situation. He says, we got you a house, and he's like, oh, okay, what is it? Is it good enough? Like, it's still this weird thing of, like, Tom wanting them to like him, which it is important for, obviously, this case, but also it's like he wants them to like him a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's when they say they got the house of that guy.
Right. Oh, that's right. They got the house of a guy, and it's basically, they don't say DeLorean. I'm guessing there must have been some
they give
issues
him a
with
different name.
They give him a different name, but it's DeLorean, rather clearly.
Because, yeah, it's like, do you remember that guy so-and-so? And he's like, oh, the one who made...
The $100,000 sports car that wouldn't work in reverse, basically. And
he's like, yeah, when the IRS took his house, this is what we're going to be using.
It was confiscated by the IRS and the SEC. I love that, too. So they're using basically the DeLorean guy's house as their house. So we cut to Vinnie's auto mechanic shop. Mm-hmm. So we're just, I like how every working class kid in the show so far has been an auto mechanic. I guess that's just like their shorthand. Like, what do the working class people do? I guess they fix cars. So he's totally ready to go. Basically, he's telling, Judy that he's ready to go vigilante justice on their asses.
And he gives her the names of the boys that we already... And she's like, yeah, we already know about them. He's like, then arrest them. And it's like, okay, we need to...
Get evidence.
Be able to arrest them. And he feels like, once again, they're not doing enough. And then we get out that he basically just used to carry golf clubs. He caddied
and mowed their lawns. And
that he's just sick of them. And I'm like, you know what? I am on your side, Vinny, because rich people are the worst. And these rich people... seriously, I cannot tell you how much this whole episode was so hard for me to watch. As much as I actually really love, of course, Penhall in this episode, and I like how Judy is handling the situation with
by the way, Holly Robinson acting her socks off in this scene, but
yeah, she does a really good job. I just hate people
Yes.
so much. Every time they're on screen, I'm just like,
I know, darling, it's okay.
They're the worst.
So yes,
Eat the rich.
We're class warring our way through this episode. We cut to the airport, and the private plane is returning. Hanson and HT are there and he's so HT is posing as the driver, basically, as Hanson's like personal the driver for because he's rich, of course, are picking up the boys, and then you're like, oh, what? But Penhall's not with them, and he's like, well, where's Penhall? And they're like, oh, we made him fly commercial. So it becomes clear that Penhall had to fly commercial by himself with the drugs
to mule them in.
And so they go to
and a kilo. They got a whole
kilo of drugs. And Penhall is full on vacation attire.
Oh yeah.
It's like I don't remember if it's actually a floral shirt. Yeah, Hawaiian shirt. So he's trying to blend in, I guess. But the way Penhall would blend in was just by standing out.
I guess I don't know.
It's just Penhall being Penhall, probably. And I might point out that there's at some point somebody says pain in the neck. And obviously that was an overdub for pain in the ass at some point in this scene.
It's Aoki as the driver talking about all the teenagers.
All the teenagers being a pain in the neck.
Because Tom is
being a dick
to him to like show that he's cool or whatever, which I don't think works. But...
Right, so we cut into the car, and this is where Penhall tells Hanson that he's got a kilo of cocaine, and he is ticked about having to do this, obviously.
But he didn't have a choice because it would have blown his cover, and they still don't have it.
Penhall says something in Spanish at some point, and I'm like, oh, Penhall knows a little Spanish. Look at this working class kid doing his homework. And, of course, he's extremely angry also, because Penhall's going a little bit class war-ish here, too, because they can basically just walk up with a kilo of, cocaine, and nobody says anything, and it's just like buying
and they just take it.
It's like buying a Coca-Cola,
the place
basically.
that they were staying was, like, beautiful and perfect, and it was amazing.
Yeah. And this is where we find out that Kim was definitely raped.
Yeah.
Like, this is the...
They got back reports, and there was definitely obvious trauma.
And that, that she was definitely, violated. So...
that just... I can't think about it too much because it really just bothers me a lot.
So we end up at Hanson's crib. So I say crib because it's like, this is like the kind of thing that you would get in like the crib, those old MTV cribs. Yeah, like, here's where the magic happens, We're kind of a retro futurist, modernist. It looks like a terrible, like all those like rich people houses that look terrible to actually live in. That like I can't imagine they actually spend any time.
Most rich people houses.
It's all this like glass and it just looks awful.
If I were rich, I would just buy an old Victorian home and goth it out really, really hard. It would be just amazing.
So the drug dealer arrives to get his share.
And he recognizes the house.
Oh, that's right.
So we're worried that Niles is like, I feel like I've seen this house before. What is this house?
Yeah.
And so Tom kind of throws out like, oh, my dad bought it from this guy. And so he says that it was the guy with the cars. And he's like... Right. Oh, yeah, that guy. And then one of the Ritchies is like, oh, I can't remember the name of the guy because it's obviously supposed to be DeLorean, but they don't use DeLorean.
Yeah.
And, he gets a little bit money and thinks he can do whatever he wants or something like that. Like, thinks he's above the law, which I'm like, that's how the F you're acting.
Well, I wrote down, old money can break the law.
But then he says, the nouveau, they never learn, or something like that.
The nouveau, that's,
oh my gosh, that's just gross. Like, oh, so old money, you can rape a girl and let her die, and it doesn't matter. But, like, new money, they can't even, like, try to, I don't know, the whole thing. Don't do shitty things.
Yes,
I don't care how much money you do or do not have.
So the Niles has a drug testing kit on his person, which I guess makes sense.
Well, yeah, if you're a drug dealer, you want to know if your cocaine that you have is real, actual good cocaine.
Stuff. And he's like, well, this isn't as good as the last one, but, he'll take it. And so, the drug deal has occurred. Then we cut to Hanson and Hoff's, they're following Niles.
Because now they couldn't bust the kids with the cocaine because Doug's the one that brought it in. But they know now that Niles has the cocaine, so they're going to try to bust Niles so that he'll roll over.
Yeah, and so they're following him. I just put another saxophone song. It's the 80s, man. It's just all the saxophone. Also, maybe a lovely reference to Hanson's prowess with the saxophone. They end up essentially in obviously the seedy part of town, and he pulls up, and there's a lady of the night leans in his window and is basically asking him for stuff, and they're just about to get out and bust him for the kilo of cocaine that's in the back, and then she's like, I got you, mister, or some such. It's like, she's obviously a cop. So she's undercover, and Vice cops come roaring around the corner. So
now he's busted by an undercover prostitute,
and so they
can't get him for the drugs.
Which is just like, Vice. And so that's when we cut to commercial, and they're all frustrated. We're all frustrated for them. Cut from commercial to Jenko playing his electric guitar, like the hippie that he is.
And Judy and Tom come in and they're upset. They're like trying to tell him about what just happened, and he's like, he stops in the guitar and goes, "What is it, my son?" Which I think is just.
He's a
that's
guru,
the funny
man.
thing about this episode is so heavy. I think that's why they have some of the stuff in there. But I just thought that was the funniest thing.
And so he finds out that Vice got him, and they're like, well, maybe they'll notice the kilo. And he says, well, the kilo, they wouldn't notice the kilo unless it sat up and asked for proposition them. Yeah.
And so he calls, I think the gentleman from the beginning, who I'm assuming still is
the homicide guy, yeah,
and asks who is the commander over at Vice right now, and it's this guy who's called Jake the Rake.
Yeah, clearly a square, and he's
an older guy.
And he says he's a Vietnam vet, but he's like, oh, I know how to deal with those guys.
Well, he doesn't say Vietnam vet. He's like, he hasn't liked you since you guys lost them the war in Vietnam.
So clearly,
the idea is that like he's like this straight-laced, obviously like, Republican, pro-war, like older gentleman who hates hippies.
Has a picture of Reagan in his office. Yeah, I mean that kind of thing. Yeah. So speaking of hard cuts, we cut to Jenko in full regalia, full like army, like
going to talk to Jake.
Well, no, it's not army regalia, police regalia. Police regalia. Oh my gosh. Trying to look like an actual cop for once.
During the pilot, we talked about how weird Johnny Depp looks in a police uniform. Frederick Forrest looks so much weirder, and he's got his hair because he's got this like longish hair. He's got his hair like back, and he's got his hat on. It is a sight. It is a sight to behold.
Copyright Lindsay Ellis on this, but thanks, I hate it. It's just awful. I don't know if she's the one who came up with it.
From her?
I don't know. That's the
person. People say that
all
the time.
She's the one I always associate it with. But thanks, I hate it for sure.
She does use it a lot, but I think that's an internet thing.
He's trying to basically.
They want to get Niles out.
That's what it is, yeah.
They don't want him busted for this so that they could try to still get him on the drug charge. So he's explaining that he wants his paperwork done. And the guy keeps saying,
I know you, gag, continue.
Don't I know you? And he's like, no, sir, I don't think so, sir.
I feel like every undercover, like we talked about this with...
And the way he's talking, he's like, oh, yes, sir. No, sir.
Oh,
Thank you, sir.
And he keeps... They drag the do I know you.
And the guy talks about, like, all this paperwork he's going to have to do, all the stuff he's supposed to file. It's just so...
Damn TPS reports. It was just very Office Space. He talks about doing the report in triplicate too, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
Which I love. Triplicate kids, by the way, is you used to have to do things on carbon copies so you could have multiple copies through the paper as you signed it. It's a thing. Sorry, you were about to say.
No, I was just gonna say Office Space. Hot take: that movie is way overrated. Okay.
How dare you? How dare you? Okay. I mean, there are bits of it that are fun. Like,
but I feel that way about a lot of like cult classic kind of things. It hit like a certain place. But anyway.
Yes. So we cut to Vinny's got a gun. Doom 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 doom. Vinny's got a gun. So yeah, sorry. So Vinny has a gun. Sorry, that's
that was really good.
Thank you.
You couldn't see it because obviously this is a podcast, but he was kind of doing this little like dance along with it. It was.
I was trying to.
I'm sorry that everyone missed that.
Channel my inner Steven Tyler.
Well, because I don't know if we mentioned this, but in the previous scene at his shop, he said that if they don't do something about it, that he will. And Judy's like, if you do something, I'll have to bust you, But
yeah, so basically we're just associating that Vinny's getting his gun and is ready to go.
Yeah, he shows up at some party, which I guess they're supposed to be at,
and he gets stopped, of course. Yeah. So now we are in a lawyer's office, and the boys are there.
I don't know if it's a lawyer's office.
Or maybe it's at the school. I don't know. It's
at somebody's home.
office. There's like books and stuff. They want to obviously clean up this whole situation.
Well, they're talking to a lawyer who is someone's uncle. It's like your Uncle Kent, and they're like, okay,
right,
Uncle Kent,
of course,
we have a situation.
And so basically he finds out they talk around it.
They talk around it as rich people do. They're like, we might. Basically, they're trying to convince him that they want to get Niles out of prison because he might possibly have information about certain people in a situation where they might be misconstrued as a possible rape and murder or something like they're talking around it like it's almost like so I have a friend, but like everyone in the room knows that they're talking about themselves. Well, and it's such a rich
the one thing that annoys me the most, of course, is the attorney is basically like, well, that's disappointing and regrettable, and it's not like
I'm disappointed in you.
I mean, admittedly, he's an attorney.
Perhaps you should tell me all about this.
Yeah,
and he's one of their uncles too. And like, if my nephew came, well, again, I'm not a rich asshole, but
yeah,
and I'm sure he probably raped many women in his day. But like,
well, it's.
That's the thing is they're like, there's a possible rape and murder. And Rollator asks, like, I'm planning on
going to Princeton.
I'm planning on going to Princeton in the fall. Do you think this will affect it? And of course, Uncle Kent says, did you put it on your... And he's application. Yeah. And he's like, well, no, sir. Like, isn't that a funny joke? You killed a girl. It's hilarious. Yeah. Well, God, I hate them so much.
Should I reference Chappaquiddick again? No, I won't do that. Okay.
You were going to get us killed.
I know.
Talking about...
The Chappaquiddick. I know the Kennedys. They have
People are going to think that we committed suicide, like Marilyn Monroe.
If I commit suicide, it wasn't a suicide. I was Epsteined. Okay. Here actually is where we have Vinnie arriving at the party. So there's this scene actually interpolated, but it doesn't matter anyway.
Oh, the other scene was when Vinnie was pulling the gun out of his drawer,
and then he shows up at the party.
Okay.
It's not terribly important in the order.
No,
we've done it anyway.
We get it. Vinnie's going after them.
21 Jump Street, and the calls for Judy have been screened, so she's kind of mad because she's like, "Oh, is Vinnie calling?" Like they were like, "Well, they started screening them all."
Oh, that's what it was. The scene before, Vinnie was on the phone saying, "I want to talk to Hoffs, Judy Hoffs."
Yeah,
and he's getting the runaround, and that's when he finds the gun.
Right.
And so Judy sees like there's a gazillion messages for her about Vinnie Morgan,
she's mad,
and apparently downtown like screens their calls or something.
Yeah.
So
Jenko calls to say that Niles has been bailed out. Did he bail Niles out? I don't know.
What happens is while he was talking to Jake the Rake, when he gets out of talking to him, he finds out that Vinny's been bailed out, of course, by our Ritchies. And he calls her Peaches.
Oh, I know you ship them.
I really do.
So anyway, he wants Peaches and HT to follow Niles to see, where he's headed. So we cut to Niles getting the Bronco back, which, by the way, apparently Broncos are what you commit crimes with. Although OJ's out now, so I probably shouldn't say too much more, or he'll find me too.
He didn't commit a crime with... Well, I guess, actually, the driving around was a crime. I don't know.
I mean, that's evading the arrest. And okay, anyway.
Criminals drive Broncos.
I'm not going to ever drive a Ford Bronco because I feel like it'll incriminate me. So he drives to what we both determined was Discount Tina Turner of some kind. It really does kind of sound like somebody trying to do her very much.
100%.
And so we cut to
he goes back to the seedy side of town where the hookers are. I'm like, man, that man loves him a sex worker.
So, and we cut to so we see that the stuff is still in the back of the car because Vice didn't see it, of course. And Hoffs and HT, they do finally get to bust him. And he speeds off, which is funny because they run up to him. They get out of the car and run up to him.
They go up to his window, and he thinks that she's a sex worker at first, and she's like, "Nope, you're arrested." And he's like, "What, for looking at hooker?" Like that's what he says because he hadn't actually been propositioned yet. And she's like, "No, for I don't know." Yeah, how she puts it, but drugs basically.
So they run off, and they try to run in pursuit. I guess.
And they have backup.
Yeah, so. And then there's backup, and there's a car chase. They have to have a car chase in every episode.
Apparently,
the car chases are all pretty good, to be fair. And they long story short, they corner Niles in an alley. And he says something about a houseboy is his. There's a day.
Well, no, he sees Aoki, who
he's a houseboy.
Was the driver for Tom.
Aren't you the houseboy?
And he's like, that's my day job.
And then it ends on a freeze frame.
Which is super weird.
The end of the episode at all, but it ends on a freeze frame of
I don't know that it's ever done that before.
They're trying to sting her that not terribly, they must have thought that was a great line, oh, that's my day job. We got to do a freeze frame here.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it does go to commercial. So we cut to Niles' interrogation, and he obviously thinks that they're never going to get him.
Because the deal, obviously, for him to be bailed out by those rich boys is that basically he's going to probably go to prison for a couple years on the drug thing, and then he's going to get out, and the idea is that they know that they've bribed him. They're going to give him all this money when he gets out.
Yeah.
And so that he won't roll over on them. And they're really trying to get it out of him, and he's just sitting there he's so cool.
So he's actually using the term non sequitur. It's like, "Oh, you're gonna get me a sandwich," and he's just being a total dick.
Awful.
He's not talking, and Jenko is pissed. This is more theory that Jenko had a bad drug trip at some point, or just had bad things with drugs because he is always angry about drugs. It was 150,000.
120,000.
120. Oh, I'm sorry, I must have written it down wrong. But of cocaine.
$120,000 worth.
Cocaine. Did you do the math on that one too?
I did the math on that one too. I don't know if this is true for a kilo of cocaine today because I don't do drugs.
Well, I also don't know if cocaine is quite the thing anymore. But yeah,
right. Cocaine
people
may
still do
not
it.
even be worth this now. I don't know. But he said that you had a kilo, which is $120,000 worth. And in today's money, that would be $271,000 worth of cocaine.
That is
so. I mean, that's
a lot of money.
A lot that will put you down for a while. But, like, yeah, they're just really, ripping into him. Penhall at one point, like, grabs his chair.
Oh, he's doing the bad cop routine.
I just put, damn, yeah.
He has a bone earring, too, which I love that he's playing the bad cop with his earrings.
Just, anyway, I'm not going to do that right now. But yeah, well, and that's the point where he goes, they're like, we know that they bribed you, they offered you money, tell us what happened, they're trying to get him. And he goes, my future's so bright, and then he puts on a pair of sunglasses.
I gotta wear shades. Yeah, the title drop,
which is ridiculous. Also, whose sunglasses are those? Yeah. Why are they in the room? Anyway, okay.
As the CinemaSins guy says, roll credits. Anyway, so, of course, Penhall is very ticked at these small sentences they guys get.
Well, no, he's mad because they can't get the guys now.
Yeah.
He's like, we have nothing on them. What do you want me to do? Go kick the door down and Tom's like, are we going to let this happen? He's like, what do you want me to do? Kick the door down?
Cut to Penhall kicking the door down.
Which, hold on, give me a minute.
All right, have a moment here.
That was good times. Anyway, he literally kicks the door down to one of their houses.
And Brolin's, of course, being a smarmy ass and talking about...
Well, they come in going, hello, guys, and they're like, little birdie told us that you're cops,
Oh, and how that they're taxpayer, which is always the rich people thing.
So I guess that means you work for us.
Which,
that's not how that works.
Quick sidebar. I worked for a library in a slightly richer part of town. Not rich, but like the upper middle class where they're just rich enough to be jerks, and they built a new library, and the number of times that people wanted me to forgive fines and crap because they paid for the library, and then if that didn't work, they're like, well, I'm a taxpayer and I pay your salary, which, if you wanted to get me mad, I'm like, I'm also a taxpayer, so technically I guess I pay my own salary? Taxpayer, I pay.
Bring your GD books back. Mo money, mo bitch assness, apparently.
It's amazing to me. The people, like, the rich people would be so mad about 25-cent fines, and I would see, like, poor people, like, digging through their couch cushions to get their $7 fine. Anyway, so, yes, I'm with you on the class warfare thing here. But
yeah, so they're basically telling them that, like, they're going to get a judge that really hates drugs.
And that Niles is going to sing.
Niles is totally going to sing. And what they're doing... So
they're leaning on the kid who's got the conscience. They're leaning on
Carrie, the kid who's like got who they think has more of a conscience, and so they're like specifically looking at him. And Rollator's like, "Oh, I'm so scared." Oh, I like when they come in. He's like, "Can I offer you a drink or something like that?" And he just like dumps all the stuff off of their table. It's just a really good scene because Penhall is just like,
and Carrie
is Ritchie's.
Like I don't feel that bad for him because he's an accessory to all these crimes, but clearly
he obviously raped a girl, so fuck that guy.
Yeah, I mean although I don't know that he...
Oh no, I said the F word, now we're no longer like...
Although he family friendly.
We weren't really family.
I mean, who knows whether he actually was involved in the rape. I have a funny feeling he was like the lookout or something. He's still accessory to all these crimes.
That doesn't matter. If you're the lookout, you're still...
Oh no, I'm not saying he gets off.
Full of garbage, with garbage on top.
We cut to the police station, and they really set up that somebody's here to talk, and it's that old guy, the guy, homicide guy, and he walks through a bunch of hallways. And so, of course, they're setting up that this is Carrie, and we pan over, and who is it? It's Rollator, who's going to be
Rollator,
who's going to be rolling over, and of course, he's doing this to get immunity because he's afraid.
He says that he's like, about this Kim Morgan matter, like this is literally what he says about this Kim Morgan matter. Some of my friends were involved. But I want you to get me a lawyer and get me immunity, and I'll talk about it. And I'm like, you SOB, you're the GD ringleader. This is absolutely rich people shit.
Can I just talk about how good an actor James Brolin is, by the way? Not James Brolin, Josh Brolin.
I will say Brolin is really good in this episode because he's a good actor. And it's clear, it's very clear that he's like a star because he's so good at being the smarmy asshole that I just want to, like, I hate him so much.
Well, he grew up rich, but he grew up, like, I think he grew up in Texas. So he's funny because, I feel like he knew kids like this, and, like, this is him playing a kid he knew. But also in No Country for Old Men, he plays a redneck and is 100% believable as that. And he knew kids like that, he said, growing up. So he's kind of got both sides of that.
Sometimes I feel like, rich kids who are children of artists, like movie stars. I mean, not to say that they're it's all one way or all the other, aren't really the same kind of rich kids as what these kids are in this show. Like, he plays that smarmy really well, but I don't know that he was necessarily that in real life. Like, he's that good of an actor.
Right.
I mean, he's just a good actor, I think, because I just hated him this whole episode.
Yes. So we cut from there to back to Jump Street, and everybody is obviously very disappointed that Rollator's going to be getting off. And Jenko is basically like, there's going to be cosmic divine justice, man.
It's more like Jenko's like, hey, you did good. You guys did a good job. And they're like, yeah, but it feels awful because like they raped and killed a girl, and he's just going to get away with it. You know, and he's like, hey, you busted the other two. You got the drug thing. Yeah. And he basically says that he believes in, like, cosmic divine justice.
Yeah, which of course he does. So we cut back to the school, and it's obviously the end of the year, toward the end of the year, and Rollator's coming out, so he's obviously gotten off scot-free. And who should he see but Vinnie? And Vinnie is very obviously, confronting him about, Kim, and he's like, what are you talking about, man? Nothing, whatever.
Well, no, he's just like, can I help? Whatever. He's like, are you Rollator? And he's like, yeah. He's like, Kim Morgan was my sister, or what did you do to my sister? And he's like, hey,
whatever, man. Yeah.
Come
on. He's just trying to get out of it again. And we have a freeze frame on Rollator, and we hear in the background a gunshot. So, rather obviously, cosmic divine
justice, that, motherfucker!
I feel a little bad for Vinnie that he's going to now go to prison for the rest of his life.
I do feel bad for Vinnie. But, I mean, that was a decision that he made.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. I'm not even a proponent of the death penalty. I don't cheer when teenagers get shot.
Yeah.
I don't hate this ending.
It does feel sort of like...
It's just awful. Well, and also, it's just... I think that's why this one is so hard for me, because, like, if you think too hard about the fact that this poor girl was drugged and raped by 3 boys...
Yeah.
And then died, like, that is... one of the worst things. I mean, there are lots of horrible things that can happen.
Yeah.
But, like, that's horrible. Like,
yeah.
That should never happen, and it happens way too much, and rich people get away with shit way too much.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not okay with vigilante justice in the real world. I'm really not. But at the same time, I'm like, that... Like, well, I would want to shoot that guy.
But it's kind of like watching a Tarantino movie,
Yeah.
It's like, you want to see... It's nice to see, the Nazis get there in Inglourious Bastard.
Good because that doesn't happen in real life.
Right. It's nice to see the bad guys get there.
Poor Vinnie is gonna put away for life. And also, my thing with Vinnie is that, like, I know that he's just in pain and he's mourning, but here's my thing for Vinnie. That's not going to bring Kim back.
Yeah.
And now you've compounded your mother's grief.
Revenge,
like, that's my issue.
Doesn't work
too
out.
With him is that, like, I get it. I would want to do that too. It's not fair that Rollator just gets off scot-free.
Well, I feel like, so here's my other take on this, is if you shoot somebody who's guilty of a crime and got away with it, there's no chance for a Raskolnikov kind of situation. And if you don't know who Raskolnikov is, that's the guy from Crime and Punishment who gets away with murder in Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment and is tortured for the rest of his life because he got away with it completely scot-free and nobody knows that he did it, but he can't live with himself, and that's the whole point of the book, essentially, is that it's almost worse to get away with the crime than it is to not to. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it's...
Well, and I don't think that Rollator would give 2 shits.
Yeah, I don't know that he may be a sociopath, but...
I mean, he is very close.
All right, so we're running long, so let's get to the... Do you want to go ahead and do the PSA now, or do you want to do the wrap-up the episode first?
We can go ahead and wrap up the episode, and then we can talk about the
PSA. Okay, so what is your favorite 80s, or just a favorite thing about this episode
Nothing.
Made you happy?
Nothing. I hate everything about it.
I love Judy's hair. These people again.
Are trash.
I'm a big thing for big hair. And
I love the sharing of an earring.
Yes. Well, Penhall trying to be preppy was pretty funny.
Do many... I'm trying to like in my mind think about the people that I know. I'm trying to think of if I know many like men or masculine presenting people who really wear earrings very much. I feel like
people do.
I almost feel like
it was big in the
gauges
90s.
Are a little bit more of a thing right now.
It was a thing for a while. Men wearing like one earring was a big thing for a while. I remember Barry Bonds, who was like the best baseball player in the world for a while,
he had like the diamond, right?
Like, it was like a cross sometimes, and sometimes it was just like a diamond. It was usually a cross, and it was just in one earring. And I remember like the old school baseball people were all offended by it.
I also remember there was that whole like stupid thing of like, if it's your right ear,
you're gay or whatever.
Which I don't know which ear was which, and
maybe it was like a code in the gay community for a while.
For a while, you know, you kind of had to be underground about things, so that's absolutely possible. I don't know because I did not.
Well, you weren't in the gay community in the 80s. You weren't even alive in the 80s.
I was not, but I was just trying to think, especially like dangly ear. I guess men that I have seen with earrings don't usually have like dangly
more like
earrings
studs
like
or something.
That.
Yeah,
it's like studs, or again, I think gauges are kind of a big deal right now for men and women. But anyway, I love the earring work.
It was cute.
I love the earring work in this. I feel like we just talk about earrings all the time.
Yeah. Well, and that and the saxophone music is always. I feel like the 80s is just.
There weren't any okie dokies in this episode, so maybe I should just stop having an okie dokie count and only mention it if it comes up. Because
maybe it gets worse as time goes along.
I really feel like there were more.
They get lazier.
What do I know?
This episode, I believe, is the first one that ends with the final shot, but with a PSA, a public service announcement, where they're all the main four are talking about how don't do drugs, kids, basically, which...
Well, but they're talking to one another. They're walking down, like, a school hallway. Like, how should we do this?
It's very meta.
So it's like a meta PSA of them talking about doing a PSA.
Which, sidebar...
Like, Johnny Depp says, drugs can really mess you up.
Yes, which Depp talking about how drugs can mess you up.
Yes, they can.
When you're the best friends with Hunter S. Thompson.
Well, he wasn't then.
But I'm just saying, when we know what happens with Johnny Depp later.
I'm like, yes, you are correct.
Although I feel like it's more drinking with him than drugs, but yes, it's...
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Addiction can mess you up, kids.
Yes.
And then the phone number for, like, if you need help for, like, drug addiction...
Which is 1-800-COCAINE.
Which, so 80s, pops up on the screen, and I love Johnny Depp gives this reaction like it actually popped up in front of him. He's like, whoa!
They mention the number while they're, like, doing their talk, like, you know, what should we say? Da-da-da-da. And then Judy's like... Or, not Judy, because it's actually
so Holly,
but Holly goes, what was that number again? And Peter goes, Holly, it's right there, and points, you know, like, because they're gonna overdo it. And Depp gives the most Depp reaction to that. He like jumps back, like, so it's awkward, it's so funny. It was, and he like kind of looks around. I don't know, it was very... It's
sort of funny to have like a meta PSA already in this. It feels like something that would have happened in like the late 90s when like the Gen X, like, Daria, I'm over it kind of thing happened. I'm trying to remember
what they were wearing, because you made the comment that they looked like the Breakfast Club.
They do kind of look like the Breakfast Club.
So, well, actually, Johnny Depp is wearing blue jeans and and this white shirt with something graphic on it, and like a long coat. He looks like John Cusack can say anything.
Oh, I thought he looked like
Bender.
Yeah,
he doesn't have
Breakfast
like
Club,
the scarves though. Bender has like the
yeah.
scarf. But yeah, you thought he looks like Bender. And then Peter DeLuise has like jeans and like a almost looks like a Letterman jacket, or
so
like
he looks like the jock
jacket. I don't remember what Holly was wearing. Do you remember what Holly was wearing?
Which
I'm
is
surprised
shocking.
That you don't remember what Holly was wearing.
Yeah. And then
Dustin was
or Dustin, HG. Yeah. Well, he's not HG.
Dustin was wearing like one of those like suit jacket things.
So it was like the prep, the jock, and the.
But I think they were just wearing regular clothes.
They probably just maybe what they actually wear, although maybe not. I don't know. They may have just picked up the costumes.
I don't know. That looks pretty much like Johnny Depp.
Trying to make you look like so the kids will relate to you, so they'll listen to you and call the 1-800.
Maybe, but I mean, I don't know.
Call 1-800-COCAINE for their pot addiction. But anyway,
I mean, I think Johnny Depp was wearing his boots that he still wears.
Johnny.
It's funny because I see pictures of him from his 20s, and it's clothing that like he still wears now. It's really funny.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us through this long episode again. I guess
the rich.
Yes. Well, don't let the rich get away with crimes. Maybe.
Yeah, that.
I'm not necessarily for setting up guillotines per se, because that ends with the rich still in charge. So we look for us next time, as we will be discussing episode 6, which we like a lot better. So if you didn't like this episode, stick around for that one, which is much more fun, I would say.
It's more fun. And also subscribe. I know this is kind of a weird way to do a podcast that we're here on YouTube. We just thought it would be more fun because we it's an opportunity to also have videos and things of that nature.
Yeah.
Maybe when we have more of a budget, we're going to move on to also having, being on all of the podcast listening devices. But right now, we are just going to hang out here on YouTube. So subscribe, comment if you'd like.
Yes, please leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you think.
If we said something that is factually inaccurate, we'd love to hear about it.
Oh, yes. Corrections are welcome.
We absolutely don't do that much research. We watch the show. So anyway, thanks for listening. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we leave these fine people?
Okie doke.
All right. Thanks, guys. You're going to learn something when we meet you on the pod.
Wait a minute, how are we going to do this? Oh, we don't want to sound too preachy, right?
Yeah, it's really important that we don't make it seem like we're pointing the finger at anybody.
No, but drugs are a problem. I mean, there's a lot of peer pressure in high school, and the point is, drugs can really mess you up. And if anyone needs help and feels like talking about it, call 1-800-COCAINE. We should have filmed it.
What was that number again?
Holly, it's right there.
Oh.
I can't sleep with those leftovers lingering here. There you are. Luscious lasagna, your flavor and aroma locked safely in a Ziploc storage bag. And you, mouth-watering meatballs, your freshness protected by a Ziploc storage bag, too. I can't wait to gobble you up tomorrow. It is tomorrow.
Ziploc, we've got the lock on food protection.